America isn't drowning in credit card debt the way people expect. There's no panic, no collapse, no sudden breaking point. Bills are still getting paid. Barely. Minimum payments are still going through. And that's exactly why the problem feels invisible. Credit card debt isn't exploding loudly. It's quietly replacing income, stability, and savings, while pretending everything is fine. And that illusion is starting to crack. America's credit card debt problem doesn't look like a crisis. That's what makes it so dangerous. There are no lines outside banks, no dramatic default splashed across headlines, no sudden collapse that forces attention. Instead, life continues, quietly, tightly, and increasingly on borrowed money. Credit card balances rise every month, but daily life still functions. Groceries get bought, rent gets paid, gas goes in the tank. The system keeps moving. And because it keeps moving, the warning signs are easy to miss. This isn't a story about reckless spending or poor choices. It's about substitution, about how credit cards slowly replaced income, savings, and financial margin, without ever announcing themselves as the replacement. That shift didn't happen overnight. It happened transaction by transaction. America's credit card debt problem doesn't look like a crisis. That's what makes it so dangerous. There are no lines outside banks, no dramatic default splashed across headlines, no sudden collapse that forces attention. Instead, life continues, quietly, tightly, and increasingly on borrowed money. Credit card balances rise every month, but daily life still functions. Groceries get bought, rent gets paid, gas goes in the tank. The system keeps moving. And because it keeps moving, the warning signs are easy to miss. This isn't a story about reckless spending or poor choices. It's about substitution, about how credit cards slowly replaced income, savings, and financial margin, without ever announcing themselves as the replacement. That shift didn't happen overnight. It happened transaction by transaction. The reason this problem stays hidden is simple. Minimum payments work. As long as people can make them, the system appears stable. Balances grow. Interest accumulates, but the immediate pressure stays contained. That creates an illusion of control. People don't feel overwhelmed all at once. They feel stretched, permanently. Each month becomes a calculation. Each statement a negotiation. Can I cover this without falling behind? Can I push this to next month? Can I juggle just a little longer? The answer is usually yes, until it isn't. But because the breaking point is delayed, the danger feels distant, and distant danger is easy to ignore. In previous generations, carrying large credit card balances came with stigma. It signaled trouble, poor decisions, loss of control. That stigma is gone. Debt has been normalized, not through encouragement, but through necessity. When everyone around you is carrying balances, it stops feeling like failure. It feels like reality. People don't talk about their exact numbers, but they recognize the signs in each other. Cautious spending, constant budgeting, hesitation around unexpected expenses. Debt becomes ambient, always present, rarely discussed. And because it's shared, it doesn't trigger alarm. In previous generations, carrying large credit card balances came with stigma. It signaled trouble, poor decisions, loss of control. That stigma is gone. Debt has been normalized, not through encouragement, but through necessity. When everyone around you is carrying balances, it stops feeling like failure. It feels like reality. People don't talk about their exact numbers, but they recognize the signs in each other. Cautious spending, constant budgeting, hesitation around unexpected expenses. Debt becomes ambient, always present, rarely discussed. And because it's shared, it doesn't trigger alarm. A common assumption is that higher income solves credit card debt. For some people, it does. For many, it doesn't. That's because costs rise with income. housing, childcare, insurance, taxes, all scale upward. The margin doesn't widen, it shifts. Higher earners often carry larger balances, not smaller ones. Their lives are more expensive, their commitments heavier, and their ability to cut back more limited than it appears from the outside. Debt becomes embedded at every level. This isn't a low-income problem, it's a margin problem. The credit system isn't malfunctioning, it's working exactly as designed. Minimum payments keep accounts active. High interest rates maximize profit without forcing default. Credit limit increases provide just enough room to continue. The system doesn't want collapse, it wants continuity. As long as people can keep paying something, the machine runs smoothly. The problem is that smooth operation masks long-term damage. Households appear solvent while becoming structurally fragile. One disruption away from failure, but never quite failing. That's how the problem stays hidden. Living with permanent debt changes how people think. They stop planning long-term. They avoid risk. They delay decisions. They become cautious. Not because they lack ambition, but because they lack margin. Debt narrows possibility. When every extra dollar is already spoken for, the future feels closed. People don't imagine better outcomes. They imagine fewer problems. Hope shifts from progress to avoidance. That is a profound change, and it doesn't show up on balance sheets. This isn't a warning about something that might happen. It's a description of something already happening. Credit card debt isn't about excess consumption anymore. It's about survival in a system where income lags behind reality. The danger isn't that people are irresponsible. The danger is that the system has trained people to rely on debt to function, and then convince them that this is normal. That illusion can hold for a long time, but it doesn't hold forever, because debt doesn't disappear quietly. It accumulates until it demands attention, and when it does, the consequences won't be abstract. They'll be personal. Once credit card debt becomes permanent, it stops feeling like debt. It starts feeling like background noise. Balances sit there month after month. Statements arrive, minimums get paid. Interest quietly compounds. Nothing dramatic happens, and that's the problem. When something causes no immediate pain, the human brain learns to ignore it. This is how debt becomes invisible. People don't wake up thinking about the total number anymore. They think about whether this month is survivable, whether the payment's clear, whether nothing unexpected happens. Life shrinks to maintenance. At the beginning, using credit still feels optional. You choose the card because it's convenient, because you'll pay it off next month, because it's temporary. But as balances grow, that sense of choice disappears. Spending decisions stop being about preference and start being about capacity. Not should I buy this, but which card can handle this right now? This is a subtle but critical shift. Once debt dictates decisions, freedom quietly vanishes. People don't feel trapped yet. They feel managed, controlled by due dates, limits, and payment schedules. And because this control is spread across multiple cards, it feels fragmented rather than oppressive, until it isn't. From the outside, it's easy to ask, why don't people just pay it down? Inside the situation, the answer is clear. Paying off debt requires surplus. Surplus requires margin, and margin is what disappeared first. When income barely covers essentials, every extra dollar already has a job. Groceries, utilities, gas, insurance, childcare, rent. There is no pile of unused money waiting to attack. Debt. So people do the next best thing. They manage it. They rotate balances. They move payments. They open new cards when limits tighten. They consolidate when possible, and then slowly rebuild balances again. This isn't denial. It's survival strategy. Living with long-term credit card debt creates a constant cognitive burden. Every purchase carries weight. Every decision requires calculation. Even small expenses trigger internal debates. Can I afford this right now? Which card should I use? What happens next month? This mental load never shuts off. It follows people to work. It sits in the background of family conversations. It shapes moods, patience, and sleep. People feel tired, not because they're lazy, but because they're constantly managing invisible risk. And because this burden is financial, people rarely talk about it openly. Debt isolates. Over time, debt reshapes how people behave in subtle ways. People become risk-averse. They avoid job changes even when unhappy. They delay medical care. They postpone major life decisions, not because they don't want better outcomes, but because disruption feels dangerous. Debt removes flexibility. When every paycheck is already allocated, there's no room to absorb change. Stability becomes fragile. One mistake feels catastrophic, so people choose predictability over possibility. That trade feels rational in the short term. It's devastating in the long term. The poorest households have long lived with instability. The wealthy have buffers against it. The middle class sits in between, earning enough to qualify for credit, but not enough to escape it once trapped. Credit companies target this group aggressively because it's reliable. Payments are made. Defaults are delayed. Balances persist. This creates a dangerous illusion that everything is under control. But control without margin is not stability. It's vulnerability. Middle-class households often carry debt while appearing fine on the outside. Jobs, homes, cars, all intact. But beneath the surface, resilience is gone. One shock can unravel everything. What makes this debt crisis especially dangerous is how normal it looks. Restaurants are busy. Stores are open. Vacations still happen. Life appears unchanged. But much of this normalcy is financed. People aren't spending because they're confident. They're spending because they're trying to maintain continuity, to keep life from shrinking too fast. Debt becomes a way to preserve dignity, to avoid saying no, to avoid disruption, to avoid admitting how tight things really are. This preservation comes at a cost. Interest doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't cause immediate collapse. It slowly extracts future income, dollar by dollar, month by month, month by month. High APRs mean that large portions of payments never touch the principal. People pay and pay, yet balances barely move. This creates hopelessness. When effort produces no visible progress, motivation erodes. People stop trying to get ahead and focus on staying afloat. Debt becomes a treadmill, and treadmills don't lead anywhere. At this scale, credit card debt is no longer about individual behavior. It's systemic. When millions of households rely on debt to function, the problem isn't spending habits. It's structural mismatch between income, costs, and expectations. The system depends on this mismatch. Credit fills the gap that wages don't. Interest turns that gap into profit. Minimum payments keep the cycle going. Nothing breaks until people do. Perhaps the most damaging effect of permanent debt is emotional. People stop feeling hopeful. They stop imagining improvement. They stop believing that effort will change outcomes. Instead of dreaming, they manage. Instead of planning, they brace. This quiet resignation doesn't show up in economic data, but it shapes everything. A society living under permanent debt pressure becomes cautious, anxious, and inward-looking. That has consequences far beyond finances. This system can run quietly for a long time, but not indefinitely, because debt doesn't stay invisible forever. It eventually collides with reality. Through job loss, illness, rising rates, or simple exhaustion. When that happens at scale, the consequences won't look like panic. They'll look like withdrawal, less spending, less risk-taking, less mobility. The economy slows, not because people don't want to participate, but because they can't afford to. That's the final stage of a hidden crisis. Credit card debt doesn't collapse households all at once, it erodes them. By the time the damage becomes obvious, most people can't trace exactly when things went wrong. There's no single bad decision, no clear turning point. Just a long stretch of time where debt quietly replaced resilience. And then one day, the illusion stops working. Not because the system announces failure, but because people run out of room. For years, credit cards provide adaptability. You can shift balances, delay payments, restructure minimums, open new lines. The system offers just enough flexibility to keep going, but flexibility has limits. As balances grow and interest compounds, options narrow. Credit limits stop increasing. Promotional rates expire. Payments rise while income stays flat. At that point, debt stops being a tool. It becomes a constraint. People feel it when every card is near its limit, when there's no backup left, when one unexpected expense can't be absorbed or delayed. That's when the anxiety changes shape. It stops being background noise and becomes constant pressure. Many people expect a debt crisis to look dramatic. Defaults, bankruptcies, panic. But that's not how this unfolds. Most households don't fail loudly. They retreat quietly. They cut discretionary spending. They stop traveling. They delay repairs. They avoid risks. They reduce life to essentials and obligations. From the outside, nothing looks broken. From the inside, everything feels smaller. This is why the credit card debt problem is so difficult to confront. It doesn't explode. It contracts, and contraction is easy to miss. When millions of households shift into survival mode, the economy doesn't crash. It slows. People don't stop spending altogether. They stop spending freely. They stop experimenting. They stop upgrading. They become cautious consumers. Businesses feel this not as a sudden shock, but as a steady decline in demand. Fewer impulse purchases, fewer upgrades, fewer risks taken by customers. Companies respond by cutting costs, not prices. Wages stagnate, hours shrink, jobs become more precarious, and the cycle tightens. Debt increases because income weakens. Income weakens because debt constrains spending. The system feeds on itself. Living under permanent debt pressure reshapes society. People delay forming families. They avoid relocation. They hesitate to change careers. Mobility declines, economic and social. Communities become less dynamic. Opportunities concentrate among those with buffers. Everyone else learns to stay put, even when staying isn't good. This creates invisible barriers, not based on talent or effort, but on margin. Those with margin can adapt, take risks, and recover. Those without it manage, endure, and shrink. Over time, this divide becomes cultural. Perhaps the most damaging consequence of hidden debt is the loss of belief. People stop believing that careful planning leads to progress. They stop believing that discipline will be rewarded. They stop believing that things will improve if they just try harder. Instead, they believe in management, managing payments, managing expectations, managing decline. This isn't laziness, it's learned experience. When effort produces no visible improvement, hope erodes quietly. And once hope fades, it doesn't return easily. Traditional advice still circulates. Budget better, cut expenses, pay more than the minimum. These suggestions assume surplus, but surplus is exactly what disappeared. You can't budget your way out of a structural gap between income and costs. You can't save money that doesn't exist. You can't attack debt when debt is the only thing keeping life functional. At this scale, the problem isn't behavior, it's design. A system that requires debt to maintain normal life will eventually hollow out the people living inside it. What's happening now is not a collapse of the system. It's a redefinition of what stability means. Stability used to mean low debt, savings, predictability, margin. Now it means payments being made, balances not increasing too fast, nothing unexpected happening. That's a much lower bar. And when expectations fall, systems rarely move to raise them again. The credit card system can keep running for a long time. As long as people keep paying something, defaults remain manageable. As long as defaults remain manageable, nothing forces change. But the cost is cumulative. Confidence declines, mobility shrinks, ambition fades. A society living under constant debt pressure doesn't collapse, it stagnates. And stagnation is harder to reverse than crisis. The real danger of this debt crisis isn't mass bankruptcy, it's a permanent narrowing of life. People stop dreaming big. They stop imagining upward movement. They stop believing that effort leads to freedom. Life becomes about maintenance. That is the most expensive outcome of all, because a society built on maintenance cannot innovate, cannot adapt boldly, and cannot grow in meaningful ways. America's credit card debt problem isn't hidden because it's small. It's hidden because it works. Just well enough, it keeps people functioning, it keeps consumption going, it keeps the system stable. But stability built on debt is fragile, and fragility spreads quietly. By the time it becomes visible, it no longer looks like a crisis. It looks like normal life, only smaller, tighter, and harder than it used to be. That is the illusion finally breaking, not with noise, but with limits.